I don't want to just, shit on Greg Abbott and what's going on in Texas. I want to look at both sides. And the way I look at a political issue is very simple. And I'm taking you guys through my thought process because I think it's important. So the way I look at a political issue is I look at it I look at it from both sides. So I'm like, all right, pro-choice and pro-life are the two camps when it comes to abortion. There's no real gray area. If you're in a gray area when it comes to abortion, I don't really know what you're thinking. There's not really a gray area. It's either you do it or you don't. Like, it's very simple. And I was like, all right, I'm going to convince myself of both. I'm going to look for the strongest arguments in both and try and convince myself of both so that I have kind of the perspective as to where people are coming from with both sides of the issue. So I figured I would take you guys through my thought process and do the same. So let's present the pro-choice arguments of abortion first. Why should you be pro-choice? Why should you be pro-choice? Well, let's start out with what is pro-choice. Pro-choice for abortion essentially means that you want to give women the choice of keeping the baby and deciding to have the baby, or having the option and the alternative to abort the child. So they have the kind of, they have the choice to do whatever it is they need to do. It's flexibility. That is what pro-choice means. A lot of people think pro-choice is, oh, I'm pro-abortion. It does mean that, but it also means you are giving the woman the choice to do whatever it is she wants. I want to make that very clear. So the main arguments from this side of the pact, or this side of the conversation, are that, number one, it has social implications when it comes to gender equality. So what this means is basically people believe that if you go pro-life and you don't allow women the ability to have abortions, that they are being put down in society because of the fact that they are because of the fact that their bodies are being regulated. So it basically means it has social implications according to pro-choice individuals. Number two, the second main argument is safety concerns. So basically what they're trying to say is, yeah, even if you ban abortion, like what they're going to do in Texas, women are going to get abortions anyway, right? It's going to happen. It's an inevitability. You are when you ban abortions, though, you just make sure that people are doing it unsafely, which is wrong. And by that logic, people are just going to be hurting themselves, right? And you don't want that. You don't want women to be hurting themselves. Like there was an age, in the early 20th century where women were having coat hanger abortions, which are incredibly dangerous, and you do not want that to happen. So, I think safety concerns are definitely one of the arguments, and one of the strong arguments for the pro-choice side is that even if we're going to do this, even if we're going to ban it, that we need, like, people are just going to hurt themselves. So what's the point? And the last argument that the pro-choice side has, or one of the main arguments, but I'm going to call it the last argument, is separation between church and state. So what that means is, in government, typically in the United States of America, it's written that there should be a separation between religion and religion interfering with the government. Basically, because of the fact that in Europe, when, the original people who came from Europe and settled in the 13 colonies basically realized that the Catholic Church and the church had too much control over what was going on in the government. And after the Revolution, America wanted to be a secular government, so they wanted to separate the religion aspect of things. They say you can believe whatever you want, separate the religion from the actual laws that we're going to make, because we need to make the laws fair and equal. Pro-choice argues that precedent. So basically what they're saying, hey, there is no separation between church and state at this point, because of the fact that a lot of people who are pro-life, and this is a generalization, a lot of people who are pro-life are very religious and tend to be more Christian. And so pro-choice people tend to think that their Christian values are impeding on the government. So basically what they're saying is, look, there is a separation, or there's no separation between church and state when you implement these pro-life rules. So we're basically going against what our founding fathers said, which is kind of crazy to think about. So those are the pro-choice arguments when it comes to abortion. Um, so you present one side, right? Those are their main arguments. And I'm not okay. I want to make this very, very clear. I didn't do this earlier. I want to make this very clear. I'm not going to reveal my politics and my take on abortion till the end because I want to remain unbiased. I want to have both arguments and a level conversation about both sides before we can get into what I believe. And yeah, so I just figured that I want to separate my opinion from the facts and I want to present the information accurately and efficiently so that you guys have the information right here in front of you as to what is going on. So I will not be revealing how I feel about all this. I know I usually do, and you guys are like, oh my God, like blah, blah, blah. But I want to keep it kind of safe until the end. Because I feel like abortion is a very divisive issue, and I want to make sure that both sides are heard. Okay, let's go to the pro-life arguments for a second. So pro-life essentially means that you do not want to give women the choice of having an abortion. You want all women to have the babies, all women to have babies when they're pregnant. So you do not want to give women the choice of being able to get rid of the baby. You want them to all have the baby. Of course, I believe there are exceptions when it comes to pro-life. I believe there are a lot of people who are like, have the baby unless it's like rape or incest or something crazy like that. There are stipulations, but most pro-life people believe that you should have the baby if you decide to get pregnant and have it. And you should have to live with the consequences of, what you did, essentially, is what they're saying. Some of the main pro-life arguments are, number one, as soon as the sperm and the egg join together, you have created genetic material, which basically means you are killing a baby from the jump. That's the argument. So they're arguing basically as soon as genetic material is created, as soon as the sperm and the egg join together after sex, you are basically killing a human because there's DNA that forms as early as, whatever it is, a week, or I don't really know the scientific terms, but that's one of their main arguments when it comes to science. It's like, well, genetic material equals a human, so you're basically killing a baby. Okay. So that's one of the main arguments that they provide. Another one of the main arguments provided on the pro-life side, and this tends to be one of their bigger points, is that abortions are elective, meaning that you have a choice to get an abortion or not, right? And a lot of people are making these choices to have abortions because they want to make their lives easier. It's not necessarily due to a medical concern. It's not necessarily due to anything. It's due to the fact that, oh, my life circumstances won't allow me to have a baby, so I'm going to kill it, is essentially how the pro-life side thinks. And so they basically believe that abortions are elective, and why should people just be making their lives easier by just killing babies? Like that is the way that they're thinking. It's like, oh, if you don't want to do it, then don't go have casual sex, right? Which leads to that whole loop of a conversation, which is, that's a show for another day. Another main argument that I saw perusing many pro-life sites and violating my search history. This is an interesting one. I actually think it's a very interesting argument. So the main feminists, and this was actually like written on multiple sites. The main feminists of the early 20th century, for those of you that don't know, were Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony. They basically fought for the right for women to vote in this country in the late 1800s and then early 1900s, and then they both passed away eventually, and then the 20th Amendment was passed. So these two were the main feminists. They basically birthed this modern wave of feminism, and they both hated the idea of abortion. Okay, so they were both pro-life. They didn't believe in it. They were both also very heavily Christian. So if they hated the idea of abortion, you should hate it as well because they were feminists. So why should you like the idea of abortion? That is an argument that the pro-life side has presented. It's more of a, historical precedent type of argument that is. So I thought that was an interesting argument. And I think the last argument is, I wrote it as God wouldn't want it this way, meaning basically that a lot of pro-lifers tend to be very religious, tend to be more involved with Christianity in whatever sect that they are involved in, whether that be Catholicism, whether that be Christianity, whatever. So and in those texts, it is written that, you know, abortion is illegal and abortion is immoral and all of these things. So a lot of pro-lifers tend to believe that, oh, so God doesn't want it this way, so we have to make sure that people don't want it this way. Um, or so we have to make sure that, the government like instills those values. So that is the pro-life argument. So I delivered both sides, pro-choice and pro-life. Both have decent arguments, okay? Um, and again, I'm not going to reveal my personal politics. I'll go on a little rant at the end. So don't worry for those of you that are like, oh, is he one side or the other? Well, you'll have to find out.